If we just think, how could I do 1% better today? And that could be something super small. We don't want to freak out about it because complication is like the thief of execution. Once there's too much, we get overwhelmed. We go one too many, and we have to keep things simple. And it may sound ridiculous, but when it comes to building good habits, small is the way to go because it starts those habits and then you can build up over time.
You're listening to the What the Gut podcast, where busy moms can come for a holistic approach to health and vitality. I'm Allison, your host, a holistic health and wellness coach. In this space, we'll dive into the intricacies of achieving holistic wellness while balancing the demands of daily life as a busy mom. What the Gut is your haven for navigating the challenges that come with juggling numerous tasks while aiming for a healthier, more balanced life. Join me as we uncover practical solutions to common health hurdles, from managing fatigue to understanding all things gut health. Through insightful discussions, actionable insights, and tailored lifestyle strategies, my goal here is to empower you to embrace a vibrant, nourishing life while saying goodbye to being overwhelmed and exhausted. So if you're ready to embark on this transformative journey towards holistic well-being, hit that subscribe button. Get ready to discover the secrets to thriving in motherhood while nurturing your overall wellness. A quick reminder, everything discussed here is for educational and empowering purposes only and is not intended for personalized medical advice. Consult your personal healthcare provider for personalized medical advice. Welcome to What the Gut, where we create our own path to holistic health, one episode at a time. Welcome back to What the Gut. Today we have a really inspiring guest joining us, Jason Wendroff-Rawnicki. And Jason is a keynote speaker, a best-selling author, somatic grief therapist, yoga instructor, and healthy lifestyle educator. He brings a really unique perspective to grief, weaving together like his own extensive knowledge and personal experience to help others navigate human experience. And after losing his sister in a tragic car accident in 1998, Jason really discovered the power of body-centered approach to grief and now shares his body up, mind down philosophy to help clients with their emotions, process their pain, and build resilience through somatic healing mindfulness. So, Jason, welcome to the podcast today. I'm really excited to have you.
I'm so excited to be here. I just love that you focus on gut health when it comes to overall health. And so that's what really attracted me to reach out to you and be like, oh, I want to be on that podcast. Because when you talk about gut health and body health, it's so critical in not just our mental and emotional health, but also our spiritual health too, because we need to make sure that all of those things are in relationship to one another. And if once we take even one of those pieces out, then we're missing literally a quarter of what we're capable of. So I love to talk about these topics.
Yes, I love meeting other people who are like just as excited about it because your gut is connected to absolutely everything, your emotional health, mental health, all of that. And I just cannot emphasize that enough. And sometimes it is so hard for me to find the words to explain that to people. So I love having other people come here and put their 2 cents in.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
And science is even showing that the cells in the gut are almost really connected to our central nervous system. And so when people say a gut reaction, they're actually activating their central nervous system. And I don't think people realize that that's the center of everything, of all the way we make sense of the world.
Yeah, for sure. And I know your story, just the little bit that I have heard about it, is really moving. And I would really love for you to share how the loss of your sister shaped your approach to grief and ultimately just really inspired your work as a somatic grief therapist.
Sure. Even before my sister passed, I was going to be a more traditional talk therapist. That's what I saw the trajectory of my life. I was going for my master's. My plan was to do the PhD in clinical psychology. I had a really strong psychology background. And even from a young age, there was something in me that knew I was a healer. I didn't have the words or the context way back then, but I would sit on a bus and be reading a book. Someone would sit next to me and just open up their whole lives. So I realized that there was something within me that was designed to do healing work. I just couldn't put my finger on it. And so I was studying psychology. I got my master's, was going to go for my clinical PhD, and then my sister died. I realized that talk therapy wasn't going to be enough for me because back then in 1998, there was really only psychoanalysis and like cognitive behavioral therapy as mainstream forms of therapy. And that's all I knew at that point. And I was like, neither of those seemed to be a good fit because I know I don't have to go back to look at my past and see what my parents did and or did not do. And I knew what the action was that's making me feel like complete garbage was my sister dying. So the cognitive behavioral thing didn't seem to quite fit either. So I'm like, if those two things aren't going to work for me, what will work? That's what really started me in my exploration. And I had just started practicing yoga right before Lauren passed. And that really started to make me feel good physically. And I started to ask the questions, what else could I do? What else could I do to bring vitality back into my body, to bring strength and hope back into my heart and my mind? And the yoga practice was one of the things that I noticed was working. But when I brought the things that I was learning, like meditation and mindfulness, into the psychology, all of my colleagues were like, no, that's not psychology. That's something completely different. So I'm glad that they're starting to fuse and see where they cross over. But back in the late 90s, they were two very separate things. So I was like, all right, this is working for me. I see the value in both. So how do I start to integrate that? And in the whole interim, I did not want to be known as the guy with the dead sister. So there was something within me that was fighting kind of my true calling. And I call it now my hero's journey, right? Like in the hero's journey, the opportunity presents itself, the hero pulls away from it, and then eventually comes back to it. And that's what happened with me. When I realized that these are the things that are working for me in my grief, which were all physical. A lot of it was physical. It was changing my lifestyle, the eating foods, moving my body, getting good quality sleep. All of these things that add to physical vitality were making it easier for me to deal with the emotional and mental work. Then I started to add meditation and visualization and different things like that. And so I was like, this is what's working for me. And nobody's talking about it because so many people may be going to a therapist, and therapy is important, right? It has its place and its function. It's a tool, and you have to make sure you're using the right tool for the right thing. So that's how I came to it. And it then started when I realized that, oh, I can help other people do what I did for myself. That's when I realized that it is actually pulling in all of the training that I've had over the course of 20 years and all of the research that I've done for me personally. It really pulled it all together. Like I didn't understand what my yoga practice had anything to do with my psychology education, to do with my healthy eating and essential oils and all. But then I'm like, oh, right, now I understand it was a God calling for sure.
That's awesome. And I think you want to make sure that people are processing the like there's a grief process and going through that in a healthy way. Some people need talk therapy. Some people might take a different approach like you did or do all of it. But I'm curious, you have developed this body up, mind down approach to healing grief. What does that mean and how does that work?
Okay, so well, the body up is that we take care of our body on a physical level, like getting, as I said, I mentioned earlier, eating well, eating live foods, getting good quality sleep. Actually, research is showing that sleep quality may actually even be more important than diet and exercise. They're putting that almost at the bottom because that's where the body gets a chance to heal itself and then reset. Yeah. You know, if you're not, like, usually that's where I start sometimes with people is that, are you sleeping? And usually with grief, it may be sleeping too much or not sleeping at all. So sometimes it goes on either set. And neither one is like a really empowering place to be. If I sleep too much, I drag the whole day and I can't get myself motivated. If I don't sleep enough, I'm crabby and I don't think clearly. And so we have to find that right window for sleep. That's like the foundation is physical health. And that will then radiate up to how we think. When our body is healthy, our mind is healthy because our brain is an organ. And if it's deprived of all of the things that it needs to work at an optimal level, then you're going to start off depleted. So if we start with the body and move up, then it makes our thinking and our emotions much more easy to manage, right? Then the mind down is our thoughts create vibrations. The way we think about our things affects the cells of our body. So if we're always in this negative mindset of, oh, life sucks and this is garbage and I'm no good and all of this negative self-talk that we do, we're creating these negative vibrations that actually affect us on a cellular level. So they break apart the healthy cells and create dis-ease in the body. So we have to also can't forget the way we think. Also, the way we think about our bodies specifically. If you're like, oh, I'm too fat, I'm too thin, I'm not fit enough, my heart rate is rather high. So all of our thoughts affect our cells. So we have to make sure that we're working in both directions for health and wellness.
I love it. I'm like, I couldn't have said it better. I'm like, exactly. That's what I'm trying to say to people. I love how you point out, though, even not going through grief, but just
Right.
through life, if we're being negative or beating ourselves up so much over how we look or because we can't eat right or we just can't get to where we want to be, whatever it is, like our thoughts, they are so impactful to us. But I'm wondering if you are more in tune with your body, you're focusing on your sleep, you're really focusing on your mental health, physical health. Do you see the grieving process for people? If something tragic just happened to them, do you see them handle it differently than somebody who maybe isn't so in tune with themselves?
Yes. So first of all, awareness is the key, right? Like a lot of times people are just unaware of all of the ways in which grief affects their overall life. I was unaware of it for a while too. I had a story that I kept telling myself, right, over and over and over and over again. And those thoughts then become the reality of our lives. So my story is that I'm a loser, right? That was that even came from before grief, but grief then fed into that story because I lost my sister. You lost your sister, you're a loser. And if I tell myself I'm a loser, I'm a loser, I'm a loser over and over again, everything in my life is going to reflect that story.
Yeah.
Once I became aware of that story, I was able to rewrite that story. So my new story is I'm a champion, I'm a victor. And so when I find that loser story starts to creep in, I reactivate the victor, the champion part of myself, because I know that's what I'm here to be. That's my divine purpose. And however that looks, my life will shape around my new story.
Yeah. And to determine your story and to really realize that maybe the story you were telling yourself for so long, I'm sure talk therapy may have been a tool that you used, whether it was like with a counselor or therapist or like
Yeah.
with friends or yourself, just like talking through that. So using that as a tool, I like to see that as well. And just how everything has its place, right? Just the approach you take. It's not just talk therapy, but throwing in how that is still beneficial for some people. But yeah, for some people though, talk therapy, it's like you can only talk so much. So working on this whole body approach.
Sure. And one thing I also have found, even with people that have gone through talk therapy, even with grief. So I have a client right now who lost her sister and just also lost her grandson not too long ago, but went to a grief therapist for her sister, but didn't work on the physical part of it. And when her grandson passed, all of a sudden, all that stuff comes back because our cells have a memory and they
Mhm.
remember. And if you don't release those memories and release that energy from the cells, as soon as something else happens, it's going to bring you right back to that other time. And once we started to work through that on a physical level, she was able to realize how much she was still connected to the death of her sister. And we were able to clear that out, and things just started to get much better for her.
Yeah, like your body holds on to it until you process
Yes.
it. Yeah.
Right. So doing it in your head and in your heart, that's great and that's important, but you got to also get the body involved in it too, because if not, you're going to wind up mirroring some of the other old patterns.
I love how you pointed that out too, because a lot of people do view grief as just mental or emotional, but really focusing on like the whole body is so essential
Oh,
for navigating through that. I love how you pointed that out and explained
yeah.
that. I love that. And I know faith and spirituality, they do play a role in your life and your work. How do
Hmm.
you incorporate these elements into your approach to grief?
Yeah, so I was raised Jewish. That's like my religious. So I'm very clear that there is spirituality in all the religions. It doesn't, in modern day expression of it, it doesn't always show up the way like that whole connection that I think it was designed for. So more recently, I have had a much more open spiritual approach where when I find things that allow me to connect to my higher power, I do those things regardless of necessarily where they come from. But I do have some people who are a client who are very faith based, and it helps to open up their faith if that's the way that you go, right? And you can find the spirituality in your faith, then it can help to open it up. Because with the yoga practice, yoga precedes like religion. And in my opinion, it helps you to get more in touch with your spirituality rather than to profess a certain type of spirituality, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that. And I can speak to that too. In 2020, I gave birth to my son, and it was a very traumatic birth. And while I didn't grieve the loss of anybody, there was a lot of grieving because it was a traumatic birth. And I didn't get the birth that I had planned. It wasn't God's
Yep.
plan, but it was what I planned. And so it was like grieving something that I didn't get, that I really wanted,
Mhm.
that I worked hard for, that I ultimately like almost lost my life over. And to heal from that, it wasn't just talk therapy, a lot of yoga practice, a lot of feeding my body better food, taking care of myself. I had terrible gut issues on top of that. My story is there's so many different factors. I was just grieving everything at once.
Mm.
But taking that whole body approach, working on my spiritual health, mental health, physical health, that's what did it. There's no other way. I couldn't have left like one part of that out or it
Yeah.
wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, there's a couple things. One is that it sounds like you were experiencing a grief of some sort. Grief is not only death related. That happens to
Right.
be my story. A book that just came out called Faces of Grief. I wrote a chapter in it, but it's 30 stories of grief and loss. And some of the stories in the book are non-death related losses, like loss to divorce, loss to incarceration, mental illness, these kinds of things. So grief does not only have to be death related, it can be a loss of a job or other things. Now, in the beginning, I was like, no, I don't think we have enough really good languaging. And I think it's starting to change because I've always considered grief as death loss. But then once I became part of this book, I saw so many different similarities between myself and someone who's gone through a divorce. So I definitely, and grief itself is a concept, not really an emotion. So there's a lot of things involved in that. So I think part of you is grieving a loss, right? Like you had this
Yeah.
certain idea of how you wanted the birth to go, and that didn't happen, right?
Yeah, I love how you point that out too, because I mean, while we look at somebody else's story, like maybe you did lose your sister, I didn't lose my sister. We can easily compare, but we don't know the extent to the grief. It's a very subjective thing, but like you said, you can grieve over so many different things and it can be real. It's
Yeah.
valid. But I also
Mhm.
think that a lot of people don't realize that, so they don't give themselves the time to process that. You
Right, for
know,
sure.
whether that's a job that they were really involved in and did have for 20 years, if they are significantly impacted by the loss of that job, they still need to process it appropriately. Same with divorce, things like that. So I love that you pointed that out.
And going back to that awareness piece of it, I think that a lot of people aren't necessarily aware of how that grief is really affecting their life. They just think, oh, it's just a job. I can get a new one. But if it was like their dream job or a job that they've been in for many years or a job that they loved and loved the people, there definitely could be a grief that just needs to be acknowledged because so many different forms of grief are completely invalidated. That's the one reason why I'm been going on different podcasts to let people know about sibling loss, because for a very long time, my grief was invalidated because, oh, how are your parents doing? Like everyone referred to my parents, but nobody ever asked how I was doing. So it took me even a while to realize, oh, I should be processing the grief that I'm feeling, but I can't because I need to be strong for my parents, or I need to be a support system to my parents because their grief is worse than mine. And as a society, we get conditioned to those different kinds of things. And that's why that's just the first step, though. Like you need to have then tools and skills in order to move forward. I could be aware of I shouldn't eat this piece of chocolate cake, right? Oh, I shouldn't eat this because it's got a lot of sugar, a lot of fat. I can understand all of the health reasons why I shouldn't eat the cake, but then I go eat the cake anyway. We have to be aware, number one, and then make a different choice and have the tools and strategies to be able to change our behavior.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I would love to ask you, what advice would you give somebody who feels stuck in their grief and just doesn't really know where to start with their
Yeah. All right. So one thing is that you can never be stuck. Everything is always in constant motion. So the mindset part of myself, the mind down, right? You can't be stuck. You may feel like you're spinning in the same place, but you can actually never be stuck because everything is in constant motion. You're either growing or you're dying, really. You're moving in some direction. You're not actually stuck. Now, you may have these repeated thought patterns that keep you in the same place, but you
Yeah.
can never actually be stuck. That's one thing. That's just like, as I said, my mindset says, and looking at the languaging that we use to describe, I say grief because that's my story, but whatever your challenge is, if it's a loss of a job, what do you think about that job and getting a new one and all that kind of stuff? We have to really be mindful of the language we use. So one, you could never be stuck, and I understand that you maybe feel like you're cycling in the same place. I always look at 1% improvements. People get too complicated with the stuff. And I'm sure you've gone through this. Oh, I have to change my diet. I have to eat better, drink more water, go exercise. I have to go pray more. I have to, right, do all of these things. And when we make it too complicated, we do not execute on anything. And I would rather see people pick one thing, whether that's drinking, and small little increments. Like I'm going to drink 2 ounces more water a day. I'm going to eat 1 apple a day or something like that. Something simple that they can do on a consistent basis. Because once those little actions become habitual, then you can add more on top of it. If we just think, how could I do 1% better today? And that could be something super small. We don't want to freak out about it because complication is like the thief of execution. Once there's too much, we get overwhelmed. We go one too many, and we have to keep things simple. And it may sound ridiculous, but when it comes to building good habits, small is the way to go because it starts those habits and then you can build up over time.
Yeah, I love that. I love it.
And it doesn't
Small.
have to be, we think that, oh, working with grief or working with our biggest challenge has to be hard and complicated and all of that stuff. It doesn't have to be, right? We can build up underneath it so that we start off small and then grow over time. And then before you know it, it's, oh, look at all these different things that I'm able to do now.
Yeah, I love it. Is
Yeah.
there anything else, Jason, that you want to leave our listeners with today?
Oh boy. Yeah, I always love to leave people with a tool. So one of the things that I love to do is teach people how to breathe. So if you're okay with me just going over a little breath because it's free, you have it with you all the time, and it's a tool that you can use no matter where you are. We're going to go over something a little bit more conscious breathing, but you can do this even while talking on the phone or on a Zoom call or when you're out in the supermarket, because when we deepen our breath, we relax our nervous system. And when our nervous system is more relaxed, then we can actually get more accomplished, be more clear. It's actually good for gut health as well, because when we're consciously breathing, we're sending the energy to our core rather than out to the extremities. When we're in our fight and flight in our daily thing, all of our energy goes to our hands and feet so that we can walk and do and all that kind of stuff. But when we breathe deeply, it brings the awareness back to our center and can help with better digestion and better processing of foods and all that kind of stuff.
I love it.
Yeah. So just make sure that you're in a safe place, like not drive. If you're listening to this podcast driving a car, please don't do all of the stuff. You can do most of it, but just make sure you're in a safe spot. I just want to leave that there. So just bring one hand to your belly and one hand to your chest. Sit up nice and tall. Notice if you've got that computer slouch, just lengthen the spine, right? Good. And then just close your eyes. You're going to breathe in and out through the nose. And I just want you to just breathe normally, whatever normal means to you. And I just want you to feel how your body moves with your breath. Just feel the belly move, feel the chest move. Notice if you breathe more with your belly and more with your chest. Or maybe they're even, right? Like just notice your patterns. And then see if you can deepen your breath. See if you can expand your belly first. Let your lungs inflate and then feel your chest rise so that your hands will separate. And then exhale, release the chest first, the lungs deflate, the belly moves back down into the body. So we call this in yoga 3-part breathing. So inhale, fill up belly, lungs, and chest. And exhale, releasing chest, lungs, and belly. Good. Filling up the belly, lungs, and chest. Releasing chest, lungs, and belly. Just do a few rounds. Notice what's happening inside as you deepen the breath. Good. Last one. And then just release the hands down by the side or in your lap. And just take just a few beats to observe any shifts or changes that happened either in your mind, in your heart, or in your body, or in spirit as well. And then when you feel ready, just crack your eyes open. Good. And just notice, right?
That's nice. I noticed though that I am not breathing in my belly enough. I'm taking deep breaths, but I'm keeping it up here in my chest.
Yeah.
Then the more that I try to breathe deeper into my belly, my shoulders just relaxed. Nice.
Because what you wind up doing, if you're not really breathing into the belly, you're really strangling yourself. And actually talk about like the gut. We want mobility even in our intestines. And so as the diaphragm pulls down, if you're tensing up in your gut, you're actually strangling. You're not giving your lungs the space to expand as much as they could. And you're creating this rigidity in your intestines and in your colon so that this way the heart sits right on top of the diaphragm. So as you move that diaphragm, the more you move it, you massage the heart too. It's this whole body communication. And that's why it's so important to be able to take those deep breaths.
Yeah, I like it. I feel like just a minute of doing that, I feel so much better.
And just going back to my comment, it doesn't have to be hard.
Right.
If you were just to do that for a minute or 2 minutes while you're sitting at a light, while you're waiting to start up that Zoom call, you don't even need to put the hands on there. You could just take your awareness inward, take a couple of real deep breaths before you eat. Create a reminder or a trigger that will help you remind you to breathe deeply. So pick a habit that you do every day. Maybe it's brushing your teeth, or maybe it's when you go grab a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, waiting for the water to boil. Pick a trigger and let that be your reminder to take a couple of deep breaths. And then maybe if it's something that you do a couple times throughout the day, like 3 deep breaths before each meal, something simple like that, right? That will help with digestion. It'll help with your gut health.
Yes, that reminds me, that was a huge thing for me with my gut issues. I used to not be able to eat anything without terrible stomach pain. For 30 years. I didn't know it wasn't normal, but slowing down and chewing my food, which I still focus so much on, but I need to get back and practice more of the deep breathing beforehand as well. But doing that, just the way that helped with my digestion was insane.
Oh, 100%. Even just saying grace before each meal, it even gives you that moment to slow down. And if you just remember, add that deep breathing in with your grace, right? Because you're going to be doing that anyway, and it'll just give gratitude for the food that you're going to eat and for all the people that were involved in growing and preparing all these foods that are going to be there to nourish your body. It's such a perfect merging of spirit and physical, just having a grace or some sort of gratitude practice before eating.
Yeah, I love it. And that's the perfect time to do it. If you think you're busy during your day, you're at least going to sit down and eat. You need to
Yeah.
sit down while you're eating and take the
Yeah.
time to do some breathing right there too as well. Jason, this
Awesome.
has been wonderful. I feel like we could just go in
Oh,
circles.
yeah. I think we could have picked any one of the things that we've talked about today and expanded that into its own topics for sure.
This has been great. I know we can find you on Instagram at Somatic
Sure.
Grief Therapy.
My website is also somaticgrief.therapy.com. The book is available there. I have some
Perfect.
great free resources, like the recording of the keynote that I did in New Orleans this summer. And then I also have a free ebook with essential oils in grief. So, how to incorporate essential oils with supplementation into your grieving process.
Thank you so much for being here today.
As I said, I love to tell my story and to be exposed to just different people's listeners, because grief is something that everybody is going to go through at some point of their lives. And I really believe in let's talk about it openly and transparently, because I don't
Yeah.
think we do. I think it gets hidden a lot of times. Yeah.
Sure. This was so relaxing and amazing. I love it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being a part of my journey on What the Gut podcast. For a deeper dive into today's topics, head over to allisonandwellness.com/whatthegut or find the detailed show notes linked below. Hey, and don't miss out on future episodes. Hit that subscribe button, and if you love this one, please leave me a review. Let's keep the conversation going over on Instagram. Connect with me and stay updated and engaged with my awesome community. Plus, share these valuable insights with your tribe. They deserve to feel as amazing as you do. You can find me at Allison_and_wellness on Instagram. Your support means the world to me. I'm looking forward to our next awesome chat. But until then, stay curious, don't drink too much coffee, keep the vibrant energy flowing, and take care of your gut. Catch you real soon. Oh, and hey, if you're ready to dive deeper into personalized wellness, check out my one-on-one health coaching program at allisonandwellness.com. Let's make your journey to holistic health truly transformative. Hey there, it's Allison, and if you're anything like me, coffee is a non-negotiable part of your day. But did you know that most coffee is loaded with mold, toxins, and pesticides that could be messing up your gut and hormones? Yeah, no thanks. That's why I only drink Purity coffee. It's organic, tested for toxins, and it's packed with antioxidants that actually support your health instead of wrecking it. It's smooth, delicious, and best of all, it does not leave me feeling jittery or bloated. So if you're ready to upgrade your coffee game and support your gut at the same time, grab a bag of Purity coffee today. Your body will thank you. Oh, and because you are part of the What the Gut family, I've got a special link just for you. Just head to puritycoffee.com and use code AllisonGetsWell for 20% off your first order. Cheers to coffee that loves you back. Hey friend, let's talk about something real. Bloating, stomach pain, and fatigue. You do not have to live like this. I know because I was there too. I was frustrated, exhausted, and trying everything, but still felt miserable. And that's exactly why I created my Get Well one-on-one gut health coaching program to help women like you finally get to the root cause of your symptoms, heal your gut, and feel like yourself again. No more guessing, no more Band-Aid fixes, just real, sustainable solutions tailored to your body. So if you're ready to ditch the bloating, boost your energy, and actually enjoy food without discomfort, let's do this together. Head to AllisonGetsWell.com or reach out to me on Instagram at AllisonGetsWell to learn more and apply today. Because you deserve to feel good in your body every single day.